99% of people don't give a sh**. In the world of tech, and especially in the world of Apple tech reviews, things have gotten pretty crazy lately. So ever since the new M2 MacBook Air came out a couple of weeks ago, I've noticed a lot of debate on YouTube about the state of tech reviews, who should be watching them, who should be making them, what should be in them, and who the products are for. This big existential discussion, and it has two main sides. You've got side one, people saying you should test a product as it's intended for the people it's intended for. And then you've got side two, which is saying that people are coming to YouTube for many, many reasons, and you should test a product to see what it's capable of and where its limitations lie. So those are sort of the two main groups as I see them, and to be quite honest, I don't think that either of them is more right than the other, but they seem to be at each other's throats because of the M2 MacBook Air. Essentially, a lot of coverage, myself included, has focused on really pushing this device. I ran a ton of benchmarks, both synthetic and real world, to try to find how capable this machine is and where its limitations are from a professional standpoint. There have been a lot of videos like that on YouTube, and people seem to be a little bit annoyed by it. And I honestly find this whole discussion very, very interesting because I don't actually think that there is any one particular side that is objectively correct. I don't think you can really be correct when testing something as subjective as a laptop. See, on the one hand, I don't buy the statement that says to the effect of, don't get the MacBook Air because it thermal throttles when running Blender, because quite frankly, there's not a lot of people that are buying this to do Blender. But on the other hand, I don't really buy the argument that says don't test anything demanding or draw conclusions from demanding tests because that's not what it's for. What a MacBook is for is pretty subjective. Apple tries to make all of their products very broadly applicable. And in fact, the homepage for the MacBook Air is captioned, "Don't take it lightly." So Apple themselves is saying this is not just your Ultrabook computer that is only to be used for Google Drive. And so it's a very interesting discussion, right? Because 99% of the people who buy the MacBook Air probably are just going to be using it for word processing and web browsing. But Apple themselves and plenty of real, actual professional people out there know that this is a very capable machine that can do a lot more than that. So the question is, when you're talking about reviewing Apple products or any tech product in 2022, where do you draw that line? Where do you say, this is not a realistic thing to ask this computer to do? And where do you say, maybe this computer can do more than most people would use it for? Now, my goal on YouTube, and especially when testing Macs, is to really push the boundaries. I want to find the outer limits of where these machines can perform. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to criticize something for being bad at a task that's outside of the purview of what it's expected to do. But that does mean that I want to find where that line of expectations would be. So for example, in the case of the MacBook Air, if I were to just sit down and make a video talking about how smooth it is, and how nice the screen looks, and how thin and light it is, that's all great. But there's two problems with that. Number one, there's 850,000 other videos out there that tell you how great the display is and how thin it is. It's a stat, it's not really something that you need to hear me tell you again. The second problem is, if you're a video editor, for example, you might be led to believe by the fact that people test a MacBook Pro for pro things and a MacBook Air for light tasks that you need to get the 14-inch MacBook Pro. But I would argue that's not the case. I would argue that most casual or even semi-pro freelance video editors up to 4K resolutions will be just fine with a MacBook Air, and you won't need to spend the extra several $100 to get up to a 14-inch MacBook Pro. So it really makes you wonder, do I refrain from talking about tasks that aren't what the MacBook Air is designed to do, or do I just try to figure out what you can do on this machine? I personally like to take that approach. And there's always going to be that give and take of what do you want to do on a machine, what do most people want to do on a machine, and what does the manufacturer intend this machine to be? Not just the MacBook Air, but the Mac Studio as well. This was a controversy, if you will, that I was, I guess, on the forefront of back in March with the SSD situation. My video criticizing the Mac Studio for not having upgradable storage did pull some pretty big views, and there were some people that were saying, you know, this is terrible. Why would they ship a high-end Pro machine without upgradable storage? And there were other people defending it, saying, well, Apple told you that it's not upgradable, so you are not allowed to get mad at them for doing what they said they were going to do. And as usual, I like to take a somewhat middle ground position. If you actually analyze the Mac Studio, right, this is undoubtedly a high-end professional machine. So who is it for? Well, it's for professionals. And so that is a demographic that is a lot more likely to want to upgrade their storage, especially if it's physically possible, just not being allowed by Apple. And to be honest, you could say something similar about the MacBook Air. The MacBook Air has performance metrics all over its product page. So you could very easily claim that Apple is arguing that this is a professional level tool. But the difference between these two machines is that the MacBook Air has the reputation of being the mass market, ultrabook, thin and light bought by students, and the Mac Studio is a brand new product tailored to professionals. So it's all a matter of perspective. But the other part of this issue just comes down to how the tech community on YouTube works. And that is, especially in the case of this MacBook Air, the quote-unquote 99% of people that aren't going to care about these issues, well, they're not watching these videos. 3 days before the M2 MacBook Air came out, I happened to be in an Apple store, and a man came in with his daughter that was going off to college, and they were there to buy a MacBook. And the guy said, oh, well, you know, if you come back in about 3 or 4 days, there's a new MacBook Air coming out. And he showed them a picture, and they were like, wow, that looks really nice. What's the difference in price? And he said, well, with the student discount, it's $899 for the M1 MacBook Air and $1099 for the new one. And they said, okay, well, we'll just take the current one because it's cheaper. And there you go. That is how a large percentage of people buy new Apple products. They will just go in and ask about the price. That is the only factor that really makes a difference. And so it wouldn't matter if this had 3 extra hours of battery life. It wouldn't matter that it has 20% better CPU and 35% better GPU performance. They didn't ask about that. They didn't care about that at all. But just because those people don't care about it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who do care. I mean, Apple talks about performance. They talk about 20 and 35%. They talk about cooling. They talk about battery life. They talk about all of that stuff because they know that even with a product like the MacBook Air, tech-savvy individuals who monitor their stats, who want to get the best bang for their buck, they are going to be out there and they are going to look for these devices. And us here on Tech YouTube, we are catering to that subset of the population. Apple is going to sell tens of millions of these MacBook Airs, but tens of millions of people do not watch my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is watched by people who want to know about performance, thermals, and how this thing compares to other Macs. And so those are the videos that I'm gonna make. Those are the videos that we make on Tech YouTube. So I really think that all of these quote-unquote controversies over the last couple of months with either the Apple Silicon products themselves or the coverage thereof, they're really all a matter of perspective. It really just depends on what you want, what we tend to think other people want, and what the audience actually wants. So yes, I do think that the coverage for the MacBook Air has been a little bit more negative than it has needed to be because, quite frankly, it's easier to do well on YouTube by criticizing stuff than by praising it. But at the same time, I don't think the solution to that would be essentially stop benchmarking, I guess, or like stop testing high-end stress testing situations. I don't really know. I don't really know what either side wants as a solution. So all I can really do is put out what I have put out and see if you guys agree. Let me know what your take on this whole situation is. Would you like to see changes on the channel? Do you think the tech community is just a little bit dramatic sometimes? Which, quite honestly, I think could be the case. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, make sure to get subscribed and leave a like on this video if you liked it, or dislike it if you hate it and you think I'm an idiot. I don't know. And I will see you guys in the next video.